Welcome, Michael Krug, to the Take Flyt podcast. Michael is a board-certified health coach and founder of Inspire Health, based in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Michael, welcome.
Ryan, thanks for having me.
You got it. But
It's a pleasure.
Michael, you and I, we had coffee a couple weeks ago, and the bulk of our conversation really centered around health, and we found out that we kind of have a lot in common when it comes to health and the overall well-being of a human and taking ownership of what health is and in your life in general. So I know that you've overcome a lot of health related things in your life, and you've got to a point now where you're a health coach and you're helping other people, which is so commendable and great to hear. And you're basically taking your experience and your journey and moving it forward and helping other people along their journey in their health quest. So do you mind sharing a little bit about Inspire Health and who you are within the company there and who you try to help out?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Inspire Health and Inspire Health Coaching. Right now with my private practice, I work with a lot of people who are focused on living healthier. A big one is weight loss. So that's definitely kind of my niche. That's where I see a lot of great results. It's also where I have a lot of my own expertise when it comes to weight loss. I like to say that I am probably a world-class expert when it comes to weight loss, both with my own journey and helping over 150 different people focus on health strategies. So you mentioned too, I'm a board-certified health coach. So it's still a relatively newer field. A lot of people don't know that my biggest focus is really with behavior change. So how do we help people with sustainable behavior change to do things that are going to be aligned with their vision, with what they want to do with their lifestyle and how they want to live? There's a lot of people out there in the health and fitness space. I wouldn't say it's oversaturated, just because we still have a lot of health issues in the United States, especially, that people are working on. But there's a lot of people providing information, whether it's PDFs, workouts, things like that. And I think it's important to have some of that structure. But how do we actually tie it into our day-to-day lives? How do we tie it into how we want to live? How do we do it in a way where we can actually sustain health habits? A lot of people get stuck on this roller coaster. I see it all the time where they sign up with an online trainer and they do, a 12-week program, and they're doing these workouts that they don't really enjoy. They're eating these meals that they don't taste very good, and they're not really too happy about it. So after this program, they oftentimes completely fall off the wagon and go back. So I'm all about sustainability from the get-go. How do we help people create sustainable health strategies that they can sustain for, I offer a 6-month program. That's my main focus, is what I do is a 6-month program. And the way I look at it is like 6 months to 6 decades. So how do we take 6 months to really strategically figure out what's going to work for you and your lifestyle that you can sustain for 6 decades? Because, what works for Ryan won't work for Michael, won't work for Steve, won't work for Jeff. So yeah, really personalized approach to helping people live healthfully. So
That's great.
yeah.
Perfect. So how do people find you?
Yeah. I'm on all the social medias. I've kind of doubled down on YouTube lately. So YouTube is just my name, Michael Krug. And then Instagram, I'm pretty active on Instagram, especially. It's Michael_Krug, just my name. Otherwise, I have a website, coachkrug.com as well. I'm on the internet a lot.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
You're everywhere.
Omnipresent, not quite, but
So,
working on it.
If I came across your website and it said, hey, Michael's the guy for me, I want him to help me in my health journey. Do you work solely in person, or do you work remotely, or how's that all play out?
So my program is set up to be completely virtual. So I've worked with people all over the country. I've worked with people, from California to New Jersey to Texas, and then a lot of people obviously in Minnesota, where I'm from. That being said, I do, for people who are in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, if I can meet in person with people, I love to do that, just because I'm pretty extroverted. I do like, as much as nice as it is to be able to work, in my home office here from my laptop all the time, I can do that, but I do like to see people in person as well. But yeah, my program is built to be, it's been delivered to many, many people virtually. And it's got, there's a lot of different components to it. So I do one-to-one calls, there's group calls. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but the short answer is, yeah, I can work with anyone, anywhere, but I love in person.
That's great. So I hear the word, and people hear the word health, and it's a very vague term, right? Health is thrown out there. I mean, I feel like I talk to my kids about health and eating healthy, and they're probably like, shut up, Dad, we're sick of hearing you talk about eating healthy. If someone comes to you and says, I want to be healthy, or I want to eat healthy, or I want to live a healthier life, where do you even start with that conversation? How do you get someone kind of going down the right path of that term of health?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, so the way that I do it with my clients, the way that I work with them, I've got 3 main pillars that we focus on. It's education, structure, and support. So one is, the education side, there's so much out there, especially on the internet. If you type in healthy nutrition, you're going to find articles that say that eggs are the healthiest food you can eat, and you're going to find articles that say that eggs are the worst thing you can eat. And it's like that across the board. There's also, especially with the nutrition space, and you probably obviously know this being a chef, there's so much polarization. Like you've got the whole carnivore crew and you've got the vegan crew. And there's just so much like misinformation, honestly. There's a lot of just people who, again, one thing works for one person. They take that as that's the truth. That's the only way it can be. So education is big. And with the education, it's learning not just what's going to work, what can work, but it's what's going to work for you specifically, right? The next layer, that's the structure, especially with the exercise piece. It is good to have structure and have an understanding of, okay, here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm doing it based upon my goals. A lot of people I work with, they're focused on weight loss, but with the weight loss, we also want to be retaining and gaining muscle because muscle is the organ of longevity. So how do we lose weight in a way where we're not just withering away, but we're actually becoming stronger as we go? So having structure is really key, as well as within the education too, right? Because sometimes, a lot of people aren't ready to learn about, let's say, plastics in our environment when they need to really just get a foundation of, okay, nutrition first, right?
Right. Yep.
There's I always talk with my clients, there's layers to this. There's levels of consciousness.
Of course.
And I'm 13 years into my own health journey. I'm still learning new things, but what I'm learning now, I would not have been ready to learn in 2014, for example.
Yep.
Right. And then support. I mean, again, my job is to have conversations with people to figure out what makes them tick, what gives them their spark, and how can they use that and leverage that and create a vision that's going to help them stick with it long term, because motivation is usually highest at the beginning. It typically goes away. So how do we capitalize on that motivation and create systems and routines within our life that we can stick to long term? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it looks.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose you probably need to meet a lot of people where they're at too. You can't, not everybody's going to be at the same situation, whether it's access to a gym or weights, right, or a budget for food. How do you navigate that based on each client to make sure that you're giving them the most accessible way to achieve their goals?
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you asked it. So again, part of this board certified health coaching model is that it's completely individualized for every single person. Again, for example, you having kids, being busy could look a lot different than maybe a single guy who is a member at Lifetime and has all these different resources available. So I have a pretty, extensive, it's not that long, but it's a very thorough intake process. So we get a very good understanding where you at, even taking into account biometrics, like what are we trying to focus on there, whether it's blood pressure, cholesterol, like what are the things that we can do to be really strategic about, whether it's nutritional changes, types of exercise, even sleep and stress management. All of these things come into the bigger picture, but you got to meet everyone, exactly where they're at. And actually, so then what we do is we figure out where you're at, and then we figure out, okay, what's the vision, right? So I call it the wellness vision. It's understanding of, it's creating this statement that I actually use as a tool. That's the health promoting and life-giving behaviors that we're doing on a regular basis. It kind of becomes like our guiding narrative. And I always encourage clients to revisit that at least on a weekly basis, if not more. And then from there, so we've got the bigger picture, the vision. Then I have a 6-month program. So 6-month goals. Within 6 months, here are the key pillars or milestones that I want to hit. And not just outcomes like amount of weight loss, but what are the actual behaviors and habits that I'm engaged in on a regular basis 6 months from now. And then from there, I do experimentation. So on a week-to-week basis, we're experimenting with different strategies, whether it's, figuring out different workout routines, if it's figuring out different types of meals to eat, if it's re-regulating our circadian cycles. Again, there's a lot that goes into it depending on what people need. But we do weekly experimentation to figure out what works, what doesn't. And then usually we're doubling down on what works, and we're kind of dropping away the stuff that's not working. So again, everyone's creating their own path, right? There's, we're trying to get to the top of this mountain. There's honestly infinite different ways we can get to the top. My job as a health coach is to kind of be in the passenger seat, like you're driving, and I'm just going to help you along the way to hold you accountable to get there in the way that makes the most sense for your life. So
I think it's really great. I think a health coach it's critical to have that support, because there's so much noise out there, and there's so much information and misinformation, in that it's almost like whoever can be the loudest takes the floor. Yeah. And whether that's good or bad, depending on what their message is. I think it's really great to have someone as a support and as a core kind of coach that can be there to be there along the way to give them the information that they need, and kind of, like you said, meet them where they're at. Absolutely. Okay. So we got where you're at today. And you've mentioned your journey, and you've mentioned it's been 13 years. Is there, or was there, a specific moment or Take Flyt moment in your life? We focus a lot on the Take Flyt moments, obviously, these core moments in life where this shift occurs. Was there one for you going back those years that kind of said, oh, something's got to change.
Yeah, without a doubt. Actually, I mean, the day, it was Wednesday, May 6th, 2012. Wednesday, May 16th, 2012. I'll never forget that day. And that was definitely my Take Flyt day. So to that point, I had gone through a lot as a 20-year-old. Just a quick before that, parents divorced when I was between second and third grade. I coped with that as well as any emotional pain for a long time with just binge eating. And then when I was in eighth grade, I was already over 200 pounds. I was put on high blood pressure medication. And again, not saying that's good or bad or right or wrong, but that was a strategy we went with. We weren't really focused on health behaviors. And, my mom is a single mom, was doing the best that she could with what she had. That's what all parents do, right? And then when I was a junior in high school, I had knee surgery. So again, long story short, diagnosed with something where basically the bottom of my femur was jagged. And then through playing football, hockey, and baseball growing up, basically just tore my knee up to where the cartilage, ACL, partial LCL tear, it was not good.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it was a lot.
You say jagged and bone, those things don't go well together.
Yeah, jagged bottom of my femur. So had this bone graft transplant in my femur as a junior in high school. I didn't take care of it. So then when I was 20, I was playing hockey at my friend's house. Actually, I fell on my knee. That bone graft cracked out. I went back in for another round of 2 surgeries of the same pretty massive bone graft transplant surgery. And then that brings us to that day, that Take Flyt day, the Wednesday, May 16th, 2012. I came off crutches, went to the doctor's office, and I was 375 pounds. My blood pressure was 160 over 100 with a 10 milligram ACE inhibitor daily. If you're familiar with that, it's something that's supposed to monitor your blood pressure. And honestly, I was just kind of in this state where I was like, I gotta do something, otherwise I'm not gonna exist. Like I'm gonna die. In my 20 years of wisdom, I had that realization. So that was definitely my Take Flyt day. And from there, it started really small, right? And that's part of the strategy I take with clients nowadays too, is like, if we try and do everything at once, you're going to get overwhelmed and oftentimes not do anything. So I just started with, okay, I knew I was addicted to fast food. So I quit that. And I knew I needed to exercise more. So I started riding my bike because high impact with, the bone graft in the bottom of your femur was not ideal. So I just started riding my bike every day. And I stopped eating fast food. I still wasn't necessarily eating healthy, but that helped me get started. And then it was a process that over the next 3 years, I was able to lose about 160 pounds, and I've sustained it now for about 10 years from there. So
that's great.
That was a day. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so I'm trying to think. So you talked about, sounds like you're a pretty active kid.
Yeah, for sure.
You're doing a lot of sports, yet you still got to a point where you're 75 pounds?
Yeah, 375.
375.
I've never been lazy. Yeah, like
No.
I said, I was 4-sport athlete. The problem was though, and you probably know this knowing nutrition science, but basically from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. every night I would just binge eat on probably 6,000 calories. So if you think about intaking that much food, and then you go to bed at 2 a.m. and then you're waking up at 7 a.m. to go to school. So one, I'm getting 5 hours of sleep at a time in my life when I probably need more like 9. When you eat that much calories before bed, your body doesn't properly digest it all. So it's a recipe for disaster. So, the fact I was able to function and still play sports is pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
And that I was able to get through school and got good grades and everything. I don't know. I just reflect on that and be like, man,
incredible.
That was, I truly tested my body.
Absolutely.
But I don't recommend that.
No. And how much, so, you're a pretty competitive kid growing up. Sounds like you had the inner drive to kind of excel at sports. How much of that kind of motivation in athletics helped you get to a point where you kind of fought this weight loss on your own and kind of head on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am one of the most competitive people you'll meet. I kind of play it off like I'm not, but I definitely am. I think, just sports in general, not even just team sports, but just what you learn from being able to focus on your own skills, focus on what you're doing in yourself. It definitely translated to the weight loss and to just being able to stick it out, right? Like when I think about golf in particular, because that's the sport that I still play a lot and I'm very into golf.
You're very good at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I haven't played with you, but I've heard a lot of stories of you dominating on the golf course.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like, that's something where, again, it's just like weight loss. It's not going to happen overnight. Like you're not going to go from a 20 handicap to a 5 handicap overnight. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort. And it's really, you're competing against yourself, right? At the end of the day, whether you're trying to become healthier, be a better golfer, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, you're your only competition. You are your biggest advocate as well as your biggest potential adversary. So how do you to leverage that and recognize, like, the way that I look at it from that Take Flyt moment, that Wednesday, May 16, 2012, was I kind of killed the old Michael Krug and decided that every single day from then going on, I was just trying to become better every single day. And that's still the mindset that I have to this day. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. I had to believe there was some tie into the competitiveness to take this on. I'm sure you see clients that maybe are more sedentary throughout life and maybe struggle and have those setbacks. And how do you coach them through that? I'm sure you had your setbacks as well. Maybe talk a little bit about that and how you overcome those moments where the mental side seems to be stronger than what you can take on.
Yeah, that's a great question. Something I've let everyone know that I work with up front. So one, it's a 6-month program because it's a unique period of time where it's long enough where you can make a pretty substantial change, but it's also short enough where you got to be focused on it just about every day. When it comes to overcoming those setbacks, I mean, one, with weight loss especially, but health in general, it's never going to be linear. There's going to be days and weeks where you feel great and where you hit all your workouts, where your nutrition's on point, and you're going to have those days and weeks where maybe you're not feeling the best. Things come up in life, right? Especially as parents, kid stuff comes up and we got to reprioritize what we're doing. So just knowing that, I always say, you don't put on an extra 50 pounds, 100 pounds overnight, or even in a month, or even in a year. So oftentimes it's not going to happen obviously overnight or in a month or in a year. It's going to take time. That's actually why I come back to that vision, because you got to have that thing that's keeping you going day in and day out, that you're working towards, that you're inevitably going to get to. You can't necessarily control when you're going to get there, and it continues to morph over time, right? So for example, 13 years in, I've gotten very into rucking lately. Rucking, like where you carry a weighted backpack.
Oh, I've seen it. I've never done it. It looks hard.
Yeah, so I've gotten into that. So something that I encourage my clients to do and that I do for myself is, like, set yourself out to do some sort of challenge every year. Something that maybe it's scary, it gets you out of your comfort zone. So last year, my buddy and I did a 50K ruck. So we carried a 30-pound backpack, 31 miles, which is something that, I mean, just a couple of years ago, I don't know if I would have been able to do it.
No. Yeah.
So I've got clients who would do anything from a 10-mile walk, running a 5K, walking a 5K, having some sort of external thing that's driving us to work towards accomplishing something that's kind of outside of our comfort zone. And it also is tied back into health behaviors, right? And I definitely in a physical sense too. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. The term a lot of people use right now is misogi, if you've heard of that, some sort of challenge to push us out of our comfort zone. So I implement that into my program. And for me, it's like, I always have goals and things I'm working for, right? Like golf, the goal right now is this year to get under a 5 handicap. My buddy who I did where am I at right now? Yeah. I ended last year at 7.4. I did get down to 6.7. So, but there's a couple rounds in there that were kind of blow up rounds. So those will drop off, and we'll get there. We'll get there. But
you're going to get there.
Yeah. You always got to have new goals and things that you're working towards, right? Because one of the things with especially weight loss that people don't understand when they get into it, it's like, the goal isn't just to lose weight and be like, yes, I did it. The goal is like to just live healthier in general. So you have to continue to kind of stretch your edges and push the bar and keep working towards more, because a lot of times, again, I've worked with a lot of people who they hit their goal and then they stop doing what they were doing and then they revert back. So it's transforming your mindset and the way that you approach life, and just, having new things to work towards all the time. That's the way I see it.
That's great. And I need to know, I'm not sure if I asked this question directly or not, but the whole support piece and having a support system, do you bring that into your coaching? Is that a critical part of what you do, or is it it's kind of okay, go ahead.
That's arguably the biggest part of my coaching. So I do have structure, like I am a personal trainer. So I use an app for personal training, and I've got courses when it comes to mindset, habits, nutrition, sleep, circadian cycles, all this stuff. But I think the most valuable thing that I offer, especially being a board certified health coach, is that support piece. So with my clients, depending on, I have more intensive programs, but we're at least once a month, we're getting on a call or meeting in person. We're going over what's working, what's not. We're doing experimentation, topic exploration. I also do messaging in between sessions. And then I also have an online community, which I should mention, if people want to join, it's free to join. It's called the Inspired Wellbeing Community. It's a lot of fun. But having that support, not just from me, but also having other people who are working on similar things, who are on the same path as you, it's critical, right? As human beings, we're communal in nature. We need need to have connection with others, especially people we can empathize with. We can share wins, challenges, whatever's going on. But yeah, as a coach, my skill set, I'm really trained in motivational interviewing, appreciative inquiry, and helping people figure out the right path to stay positive and keep going, as well as when there's times of ambiguity, how do we find the right path to move out of that and continue to improve in different ways. So yeah, sports, that's the biggest thing of what I do is just, again, you don't have to go this alone, and having someone who you can confide in and get information and new perspectives from, it's a game changer on the journey.
Yes. And I wonder too, you hear a lot about just men versus women, and I don't know if you might see this more often than I do, but do men feel like they can do it alone more so than women do, and a little more stubborn in their approach of their journey or weight loss journey or whatever the health journey might be?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different factors at play here. So one, yes, men in general we're problem solvers by nature, right? So if we see a problem, we feel like we should be able to figure it out by ourselves. Even if that means, trying and failing over and over, losing and gaining the same 40 pounds over and over until something finally sticks. Another thing is that with men too, what I see is a lot of times we don't, again, being problem solvers in nature, we don't take it seriously until we have some sort of issue come up, right? So a lot of times men, they don't see the value in focusing on preventative or holistic health until they're diagnosed with pre-diabetic, or until they're diagnosed with hypertension, or something comes up where they're like, shoot, like I got to do something and make a change. Like that was me, right? Like, yeah, it took me getting to 375 pounds, blood pressure at a level that is not okay, and seriously contemplating my life to be able to make a change, right? So actually, I'm happy you brought this up too. There was a period of time where I only worked with men. I have been working with men and women the last couple of years, but I'm niching down to just men because there's such an important gap that needs to be filled, and understanding that as men, we need to take our health from a proactive lens. Like, it's so important. It's not talked about enough. Again, a lot of surface level talk with a lot of men is what we'll go into, but like, how are we really doing, right? And especially when you think about fatherhood, being a parent, and just showing up in the best way for ourselves, for our kids, for our spouses, for our communities. The more I look at things in an energetic lens, and the higher frequency energy that we have, the better outcomes everyone that we interact with is going to have. So yeah, it's not kind of non-linear answer, but I hope that.
Well, it's a great approach. You hear so many stories of men avoiding going to the doctor because maybe they're afraid of the answer. Maybe they feel like health's okay. Maybe they're just waiting for a reason to go, other than being, like you said, the proactive approach, which probably is the more sound approach. But for whatever reason, as men don't take that approach. And hopefully, maybe that can change. Maybe there's ways we can kind of build community and kind of get things kind of in more proactive than reactive when it comes to health.
Yeah, there's a lot of statistics, right? Like men are, I can't remember what it is, like maybe 60% less likely to go to the doctor. They're far less likely to talk about anything mental health related. So just changing the conversations. And I think, your platform here too is an opportunity to do that as well. So yeah.
Well, great. Hey, I got a question for you, because I asked everybody this, and how inspiration is so big to Take Flyt. Are there one or two people that come to your mind that you've drawn inspiration from over your life?
Yeah. Oh man, that is such a great question. So one is my buddy Jake. I haven't talked to him in quite a while. I don't know how he's doing.
We'll give him a shout out here. Hey, Jake.
Yeah. So long story short, he was my next door neighbor basically in the dorms in college, and that was my roommate sophomore year. And he was the first person who like actually had a real conversation with me. He's like, how you doing, man? Because like, at that point I was probably 325 pounds and, binge drinking, partying, all that stuff, and just not healthy. And he, his brother was a CrossFit trainer and he did all sorts of stuff. And he was the first person who actually like had a real conversation with me. There's a difference between being nice and kind, right? And he was the first one who was actually kind in a way where he was like, I can tell you're struggling, man. Like, if I can help you in any way. And he was in high school, he was pretty fit and he was always into lifting weights. So he was actually the person who helped me look at it in a different lens. He saw that I wanted to change, but he was the only person who actually would say it to my face. And I was like, that was huge, right? And I think that's another thing too with men is like, a lot of times we're just nice and we kind of beat around the bush, but we don't often have the person who's going to like have that hard conversation and be like, hey man, like I can tell that you're struggling and I don't know what you need or if I can be the person who's going to provide that, but just know that I see you and however I can help, I'm here for you.
Wow. That's really big, especially at that age too, where, people are focused on themselves and worried about themselves, that they actually have the lens to see you and recognize that you need help. And the biggest part of it all is they have the conversation
For
and
sure.
to approach you. I mean, to not know what your response is going to be. That's wow.
Yeah. Cause I could have easily gotten defensive about it and I would say when I was growing up, like my parents would try and have that conversation, I just get super defensive and shut down around it. So to have it from someone outside of my family, I again, I don't know where Jake's at right now. I haven't talked to him in quite a while, but I hope he's doing well. Cool. And he was huge for my journey. And then some other ones, like I feel like, I don't know if I should just call them like mentors from afar, but like David Goggins, for example, that guy's nuts. You're familiar with David Goggins? So like I've read his books and I've listened to him on podcasts and stuff. And it's just like, man, it just puts into perspective, like the things that I deal with and the problems that I have, like compared to what he has gone through in his life. Like it's just inspiration to keep me going. So that's another one who I kind of look up to him just because that dude is, I mean, he might be mentally like insane. He's a little crazy, but I feel like in a good way, right? Like he's spreading a good message. He's, stay hard, right? Keep doing the hard things. So yeah, that's another one I would say too.
Good. Well, let's end with this then. I have a final question for you. What is something you want to share with others that might be at that point in life where they're ready to take flight?
Yeah, I think you gotta go for it, right? There's never going to be, a lot of times people get stuck in thinking they need to plan or have a strategy and just like all the ducks need to be in a row. And there's never going to be a right time. Start messy, start unprepared, and just start now. I think that's the biggest thing, is that if you are continuously waiting for everything to be just right, you're probably never going to get started because it's never going to be just right. And when you look back, a lot of times, we reflect, and if you would have just started whatever it was a year or 2 years ago, where you'd be now versus waiting for it to happen, it's never going to be the right time. So just do it. Just go for it.
There it is. Michael Krug, thanks so much for joining the Take Flyt podcast today.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take flight.